Disappear for a while, but now I am back again, introducing a new style, them call the Ling Bang. I am a musical zen, violating the charts again. Disappear for a while, but now I am back again, introducing a new style, them call the Ling Bang. I am a musical zen, violating the charts again. Ling Bang, no matter if you're 50 or 10, Ling Bang. Big bully in a pen, Ling Bang. Rooster or hen, this one, yeah. Creme de la creme, Ling Bang. No matter if you're 50 or 10, Ling Bang. Big bully in a pen, Ling Bang. Rooster or hen, this one, yeah. Creme de la creme. First, make you see how far your back bend. If you don't know how, get less of a current. Turn your body round like a smoothie or the blend. New dance trend. Style we no borrow, style we no lend. For sure, we no the beg no friend. From in the thing far way back when for the elders and the children. Can't do the thing they gonna to do it like charge. Back it up in the garage. Make them know we squad living large. Hold a salute every sarge. Disappear for a while, but now I am back again, introducing a new style, them call the Ling Bang. I am a musical zen, violating the charts again. Disappear for a while, but now I am back again, introducing a new style, them call the Ling Bang. I am a musical zen, violating the charts again. Ling Bang, no matter if you're 50 or 10, Ling Bang. Big bully in a pen, Ling Bang. Rooster or hen, this one, yeah. Creme de la creme, Ling Bang. No matter if you're 50 or 10, Ling Bang. Big bully in a pen, Ling Bang. Rooster or hen, this one, yeah. Creme de la creme. Well, I
Mike.
gonna shake it. Never gonna DR, we can't fake it. Entire yam, authentic.
All right. Greetings. You're on, right?
Yeah.
I am G. Michael Reed from Belize City. I'm waiting for Greg Morrison. See why I spoke to Mr. Jeffries, and it looked like he's gonna be late. They say he wanted to come on, but he got tied up with a few things and be a little late. I'm hoping we'll catch on at least by later. I have to let in Greg when he come on. And Joe is supposed to be coming on. So kind of throw it off, when you work out, and he was having a little issues with his equipment too. Because apparently you never get the computer going. You have to do it on the phone. And he say he had something he had to finish up, and he try to jump on as soon as he can. So I see him probably about 7:30 if he comes on. Hopefully he'll work out the issues and get with us, no? I was really looking forward to that. I had prepared for his participation. And again, though, the show must go on, no? Because we are here every Wednesday evening, and we're not going to be deterred. We're not going to let anything stop us, because we don't want to disrupt a good flow at all. It's been coming along well. We've had some wonderful shows, and I look forward to a number of other ones coming up. Number of exciting guests that we have lined up that should be joining us sometime in the near future. Folks, any if you out there have anybody really want to see engaged in a frank discussion on any matter, we're available for that. That's what we do. It's myself, Joe Cowie, and Greg Morrison from Los Angeles, and we try to get that we try to get the guests set up and ready for whatever week they're on. This is not perfect science by any stretch of the imagination, so things have to be worked out from time to time. We beg you to bear with us. We're doing the best we can to get this show kicked off and running smoothly. Temperatures are dipping here in Belize City. Last night was kind of chilly. Tonight promises to be even colder. And we do know that cold in Belize is relative, nothing compared to what you guys up there in the far frozen north experience on a regular basis. But for us, with these thin walls, with these cracks in the palings, we don't have any insulation. Few of us have any hot and cold water. We go strictly on the cold, and for the most part, it's rarely ever cold enough to be uncomfortable, but it certainly gets quite chilly at times. I personally like the cold water, and I find that when I be in the cold water, I'm less likely to catch a cold of any kind. And we have to check on that and see. Joe is saying he hasn't received a link from you yet, Clinton. Let me see. Can I share mine? You hear me, Clinton? Let's see what's going on with Joe here. Um, okay. Yeah. But anyway, the temperature is about 65, I believe, at this point.
G Mike, you hear me?
Yeah. Joe is saying
Yeah, I'll
he's not.
send the link. I'll send it. I'll send the link. I'll send it again.
All right. All right.
All right.
Let's try to get Joe hooked up. He's trying to get in. All right. Interesting. It must be another Joe Cowie. I'm being told I'm not friends with Joe Cowie on Facebook, but I do. That must be some other. Let's see. Jose Cowie. Here we go. All right. People. Here we go. All right. Again, it's a show that we hope to make interesting enough for you to join us every week. And you're free to comment. You're free to make any recommendations and suggestions you want to. Again, we're in different parts of the country, if you will, different parts of the world. None of us in Palestine, but as you know, that situation there is still dread and looking worse. I'm thinking at some point somebody will have to, with some common sense, stand up and say, please stop it. Enough is enough. How angry can you be? How much hate is in your heart? How much do you want to be like the people who were doing the same thing to you? The very same kind of situation that was happening in Germany with the Nazis is what is happening now in Palestine. It cannot be allowed to happen. Not in this world. We're setting a bad precedent. You know what's going to happen from here on in. What is happening here is not only happening to the Palestinians. Somewhere in the future, everybody will be Palestinians if we're not careful. Because it is a matter of taking might, making right. And they can justify any way they want to. But it's obviously from all the facts that are there, it is not something that we can turn our head away from and just say, well, it doesn't bother me. It has to bother you. It bothers me. I mean, I lay up at night and I'm thinking, my God, what must it be like? I saw a mother crying today. I haven't seen her son in weeks. Don't know if he's alive or dead. There are people who lived over there for a while and keep saying they haven't even heard from their friends or relatives that are left over there. I saw some white people, some Jews condemning what is going on over there. All of us ought to be concerned enough to raise our voices and say, enough is enough, man. Let it stop. Here in Belize, we're getting ready to enter another silly season. The elections are coming up next this March. What I'm saying next March, as if we were in last year. We're already out of January, Tomorrow is February the 1st, people. So elections will be March the 6th, the first Wednesday in March. I think that and I really believe that our general election should also have a fixed date. like the US do it the first Tuesday of every November. We don't have to copy them, but we can pick a date. And I think it also should be 4 years. 5 years kind of long. Um, I don't know. Level it out with the municipals and let's do all elections one time if that's the case. I don't see much of a challenge coming from the United Democratic Party, which is sad because for any democracy to thrive, there has to be um, working opposition. I don't mean an opposition that's just opposing everything and trying to bring down the government in every opportunity. I mean an opposition that is working towards giving ideas, working with the government because they are a part of it. It really ought to be functional. That's what it has to. Good. Here comes Joe Kovic. Good evening, Joe. Thanks for joining. Let's see what happens there.
Well, let's cross the figure. Are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you, and I hear you good.
Well, all right.
Whatever you did, you did it right. Yeah, but yeah, it's good to hear you. 'Cause we missed you a couple of weeks there. You had us on hold, but yeah, you're in. I was talking about the elections coming up, Joe. You're a man who quite familiar with that. You've been there, done that. You were a mayor for a while, right? For how long?
I was for about 4 years. 9 years I was there, but 4 years as mayor, and the other 5 years was as councillor.
Okay. What happened? What did you retire? Did you lose the last election? What happened?
No, what happened? I was asked after my 4 years as mayor, and of course we had completed the institutional strengthening with the World Bank funding under my mayorship. And then the party asked me that if I could maybe go to the national elections because they felt that Caribbean shows was divided in a way that it was strongly UDP and the other portion, Freetown, was strongly PUP. So they thought that I would have a chance at defeating Esquivel. So I decided to go through with it. And well, we won. I won the election. The national. When I defeated Esquivel in the election.
You brought on the giant.
Well, he was a giant in a sense because
he was the prime minister, right? So,
yeah, and I thought he had some good ideas despite his kind of callousness about him. But I thought he was serious about reform in the public sector and have better, more financial management. But anyhow, that was when I moved on from the city to the national elections.
Interesting that you say that because you've been nothing but a PUP. You've been a PUP most of your life, right?
All my life, because I was 8 years old when the party was founded. My mother was there from the beginning with the party, with Mr.
But many people have said that Esquivel was not a bad prime minister, but he had his weakness, I believe, was he was bland in character. He wasn't an exciting fellow for sure.
Yeah, there was nothing charismatic about him. He was somewhat callous. And he made some decisions which, yes, were the right decisions, but the way he made them. For example, the time to right-size the public sector, which, well, they call it downsize, which he was doing the right thing. But that is one of the big problems facing this country. We are overburdened with our public sector.
Man, we have a huge wage bill for the government to cover every. I see they're fighting now to cover ITVET.
But I'd like to discuss that, no doubt. But to come on now to what he did, he was doing the right thing, but the timing. In other words, he began to downsize. But he fired 900 public officers just before Christmas.
Yeah. That's not a good idea at all.
Didn't go down good for him. I said the intention was good, but the timing was bad.
But Joe, there's never a good time for that. I mean, when you fire people, it's not a good time. You're getting backlash on that.
No, what happened is that there was a plan, which again, because of my heading the public sector reform, is that we would have right-sized the public sector, but we were not going to fire people. What we're going to do is that those who are there, we will continue to move them from open vote to permanent. without bringing in any more new people into the public sector. And eventually, that would have brought it down. That we never had to go for no mass firing. So you have people retiring. Every year, people retiring. So when people retire, if you have a tight public sector, running a tight employment status, you will then have to bring in. So every year, you'll be bringing in because every year people are leaving. But what we were to do was that we were not to bring in anymore. What is there, we'll keep there. For example, you had people there at the time which had 20 years already on open vote. That should have never been. Open vote was only seasonal. So we had a good plan. We were just not never did get the time maybe to implement it.
Explain the open vote process for us, Joe.
What happened with open vote under the period of, I would say, begin with the public sector under the British, where you have at that time, much of the work, public work specifically, was done internally within the public sector. So you're building the Hummingbird, which was a good example, but the Hummingbird will build and it's finished. So you will bring in workers only during the period of building. When the period is done, then they leave because they are open vote. So they only work for that period when needed.
So they're temporary, basically.
Yeah, they're temporary. And that's why the British use the term open vote. So they did it in wherever they have infrastructure work going on, where they don't need that heavy amount of workers continuously throughout the year. So that was up to.
What do you do with those workers after that is over? Do you just tell them, well, go on, you have to go try to find something somewhere else?
Yeah, at that time, my recollection was that these were the type of workers which they were very much in demand. You know, they were manual workers, but they were very much manual workers. They were very skillful people, really. It's just that, they go into other jobs, they go into private sector, they work just like they're doing now.
They didn't mind work, actually, it seems.
Oh, no, because jobs were there. I mean, either in the public sector or the private sector. So when you finish as a open vote worker in the public sector, you very likely will be wanted in the private sector because there was a lot of construction taking place.
Joe, I saw the young lady from Belmopan complaining because she wants to run for mayor, but she's working for the government. So she needed some time off, and she was applying for that without pay to go and campaign. What's the policy as far as that is concerned? How does that work?
Yeah, they could have. It is within the law to give the suspension because you could give it up to a year. And after that, which if not take a year, because they did it before, it happened before. Badar Moody, several of them had taken suspension, running elections. If they lose, they come back and they continue. If they win, they stay where they are. And they make it a career. So to me, it's quite within the law to allow the person to have a suspension.
It is also within the law to deny them that time.
Well, I would say that the decision is not necessarily one of denial. It is one that almost comes with a right because you have the reason why. And there was provision for it. There was provision for you to take time out. There was a period before that came during the period of Badar Moody, I think, had set the stage for that. He was a public officer, and at that time they decided that they need to take a relook because the public sector was so tight, strict then, is that you could not publicly identify yourself with a political party. The governor would write the letter to all the departments. You should not even go into a public meeting. So I think they became very restrictive. I thought it was unfair. It was violating our rights, the right to go. And the neutrality that the public sector demanded was a neutrality where while on the job, you must not show favoritism. You serve everybody the same.
Makes sense.
Right. But they had this thing, the British, which was changed, that you cannot publicly identify with a political party. So the minute you are asking for the suspension, you have to identify, and even if you're not independent. But then they changed that. And they agreed that you could even begin to, one time you could even be doing work after, suppose you wanted to work in the evening, do a private job. There was a time you couldn't do it, but afterwards they changed that too. You had to write to the governor for permission. I wrote to the governor for permission for some of us to do to start a business outside the public sector, and they approve it with the conditions. Huh? So then the change begin to come where they begin to loosen up a bit and give us our rights. It was our rights to identify, but we must not show favoritism while on the job.
Yeah, but it happens. We do know that it happens.
Well, human nature, well, of course, maybe some might not have the fortitude to be able to at least not be tempted by those things. But today, the reality of the public sector today, and again, when I speak, I want to make sure that I'm talking about government in a generic sense.
Mm-hmm.
What has been built up is a network of a well-entrenched, widespread patronage system in the public sector. So what happens is that your crowd comes today, you are in. No, tomorrow you are out. Some of them, they even break their contracts, as was done in this last term. Contracts which were taken to court and they won. So the government paid millions of dollars just to have those people who are under the UDP, who were given contract on the UDP, to let them get out of the contracts and bring in who they wanted. And that's a fact. That's not the result. The evidence is there. They went to court. They won all the cases. So then you have that group, which they just bring in because they're not taking out anybody. They're not replacing them. And this is where the public sector begins to grow. So there are some who will remain that were brought in. And then when the party changed, they will not move them because some of them were brought in, some of them was pushed through the Public Service Commission to make them permanent. So what happens then? The next party now wants for their supporters. So they bring them in. So today the number is around, some say about 17,000, 19,000. That's 17,000, 19,000 is far too much for this public sector. Far too much. You compare ourselves in the Caribbean. And there is a good ratio because the public sector is more labor intensive, so I could understand it will be a bit high. It's not a capital intensive type of business. But if you look at the ratio in our public sector right now, and look at the money spent on human resource, which is one, salaries for permanent, salaries for open vote, pensions. All of those when added up are around 60 to 70% of the dollar. So what you have left to provide the supplies and the equipments and things that you need for these people to work, it's like taking on 10 men to chop the grass, but you only have 6 machetes or 6 yard cutters. So 4 of them will be idle. So when you look at the ratio on any sector, whether the public or private, the private sector would dare not set up such a ratio, whether capital or labor intensive. But the public sector is far too big. It's a burden on the people.
Well, they're not spending their own money, so they don't really care about it. But then they're digging a hole, no, and tough to get out of.
Well, I would say that it is interesting to me. It was to look at that recent case with the public sector where they lost the case because of the government. The previous government agreed that they will sell over 1,000 acres of land to a Mennonite, I forgot his name, up in Duck Run to go into farming. And everything was done except to consummate the transaction by giving them the title. Mm-hmm. So the change of government came. And when they came, the new government, this present government, found that they did not comply with the National Lands Act. Because under the National Lands Act, if you have more than 500 acres, you should prepare an EIA or Environmental Impact Assessment. That was not done. And then under the Finance and Audit Reform Act, once you are buying more than 500 acres under the Act, or you're buying a key, you have to go to the National Assembly for approval. So that was not done either. So the present minister believes that that transaction was invalidated. It was not legal because they violated 2 laws, which they did. They violated the National Lands Act and they violated the Finance Act. But when they went to the court, the government lost the case because the judge is saying, rightly so, he said there is nowhere in this act where it is saying that if that is being violated, that the contract is invalidated. He said, by the way, he said that was the responsibility of the ministers. that they should be flagged because they should not allow it to happen. It was they who did it. So to me, they won the case because there was nothing in the law that says the contract would be voided when it was the minister's responsibility for them to comply at the time.
But isn't that almost commonsensical though? That if you violate two articles in there, two main things. So one it didn't go to cabinet, and two it what there's something else that they had to do.
They had to prepare. Once it was a 500
The
acre.
EIA, they didn't get the EIA. So
Right.
these are two things now. These are violations, certainly.
Right, there were
Should
violations.
not null and void the
No,
contract.
no, I think the court was right because the buyer did not violate the contract. It was the seller. It was the seller who.
But they didn't provide the ENA. They're
No,
violating it.
no. You representing the people were the seller. The other guy was the buyer.
So isn't it the buyer that needs to have an EIA done and present?
No, it was it was for the seller to enforce the EIA.
Enforce it or get it done. Enforce it.
If I am selling you my land,
right,
I am selling it,
and the EIA has to be done.
No, I didn't pay the property tax. I didn't pay it. I just reverse the situation, but I look for another example. And you decide that you will buy the land. No, you don't buy the land. But you never bother to ask me if I pay the property tax. You never check it. So the minute you buy the land, then it's transferred and it's in your name. So you are liable now for the property tax. You see, remember that one buyer and one seller? And the buyer was doing what he was supposed to do in his mind. And the seller was to make sure that the buyer do what the law, that's what the judge said. It's a minister to be flagged.
But tell me, sir, this I hate, but is there any way to flag that minister? Is there any way to hold these people responsible when they make such errors that cost us so much money?
Yeah, you can. But I don't know if they would want it. You have the third. They have a third act.
Well, they're separate parties. You would think they would want to do it. I mean,
well, I know of a very good case that went before. It's a third of misfeasance. It can be either done by the citizens to bring action against the minister because he caused a loss to the public sector, to the people.
So let's talk about that. A group of citizens, what would that be? A class action suit? A group of citizens come together and say, listen, we want to take this matter to court and hold this minister liable for the monies that's come. Because they come out there with a lot of money. If anybody had to pay, don't you think they should pay the money that needs to be paid?
Right. And what happened is that the Chief Justice Conte was the one that enlightened this country with the third of misfeasance, because the third of misfeasance was created by the British. It was a British creation. And of course, we adopted it because of being a colony at the time. And the British did the third of misfeasance. It was for where the minister would have wronged the public good. Then the citizen would have a right to take action against the minister. But when they took it to the Caribbean Court of Justice, it was split 3-2, where the Caribbean Court of Justice expanded it, that we could not only have to be the citizen taking it, they allowed others to do it. And of course, those who were opposed, they were supporting, 2 of them supported Conte decision. The 3 junior judges went against. But what the 2 senior judges that supported Conte saying, that if you allow the third of misfeasance to be used the way the ICJ was, the Caribbean Court was saying, he said one party, the incoming party, can victimize the outgoing one. So the truth about it is that if they want, seeing that the Caribbean Court of Justice had expanded the definition beyond what the British intended, they can take action under the third of misfeasance. But will they?
But that makes sense to me. I don't see them adopting that because we're a colony. I see them adopting that because it makes sense. There must be a way to hold these ministers. But what's the use of having a way if we're not using that way?
Well, let me give you another recent example. When the Auditor General said that he could not audit the public accounts because they were not complying with the Finance and Audit Reform Act, clearly it was the responsibility of the Minister of Finance. He was urged, I was a party to it, it was a group of us, myself, a lawyer, and a politician. And we argued successfully that the Auditor General evidence was strong enough to take action against the Minister of Finance. Of course, it was left to the party leader to decide. And at the beginning, they decided not to go through with it. Eventually, they were convinced that some action must be taken. So what was it that they did? The then leader of the opposition took an action against the Prime Minister, but he didn't litigate. He gone for a declaration. So when the case went for a declaration before the court declared that Prime Minister Barrow violated the law. But it was a declaration.
So then, none can be done about that.
Well, what happened? It could have been done. But the then politicians took the position that it was the DPP should initiate the decision. So here again was a case, and it was the same act, the Finance and Audit Reform Act. And the irony of it is that the sanctions that are under the Finance and Audit Reform Act was sanctions that was introduced by the then Prime Minister, Minister Barrow. They amended the Finance and Audit Reform Act to bring the sanctions. But the sanction that they brought did not include the violation, the invalidation of a contract. That's why in this particular case with the land matter, these matters, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to look at them more closely because there are too many violations of laws and our rights. And I'm not saying any particular, both sides have been doing it. And unfortunately, so many of our people themselves are not fully knowledgeable of the Constitution and the laws.
Yeah.
So they haven't been taking these options.
But Joe, with all these cases, and we seem to be losing one after the other.
Several of them.
But don't we take steps thereafter to ensure that we tighten up the system in place, that we don't continue to just throw our money away like that?
Mr. Chairman, I will give you my very strong convictions coming out of my years of experience and coming out of other countries' experience. Democracy, and I'm coming back to Socrates, is a high-risk thing. It can be very dirty and mean. But if you don't have participatory democracy, not just by going into the ballot box and vote, if you do not have participation by the people in its fullest extent that the Constitution allows, your democracy will be weakened. And that's precisely what is happening. These things happen. And actually, I could say this now to this show, that one of my main reasons for accepting the invitation to come as a guest was for reasons like these, that we need to bring an awareness. This constitutional reform process may help in bringing awareness to the citizens of this country. 98% of them didn't know the Constitution. So how can they participate?
Still don't, because I don't think people are reading it. I mean, and I don't know that they're taking this reform commission seriously either. And at last I heard they had trouble continuing their funding because they needed an excessive amount of money to do the work. Everybody has to be paid.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the first one that I went to, when I was invited by one of the speakers, and I went and I spoke. But I asked the question to everybody there, those around the table and all, can you show me any part in this Constitution, that is anything that is in there, or anything that should have been in there that is not in there, that caused such wide poverty, caused such wide corruption, caused such high unemployment? There's nothing in the Constitution that caused that. The reason why we are the way we are is because we didn't comply with the Constitution and the laws that govern, that underpins the Constitution. Our number one problem is one, non-compliance by the political directorate, and two, reluctance, if not just maybe by ignorance, by the people to participate.
But Joe, it's easy to say that, but then the process for participation in something like this, because certainly you have to go to court. Lawyers cost money. They not no, again, no pro bono on matters like that. So you have people out there who are basically poor, just trying to make ends meet, hand to mouth, and you can't expect them now gonna get together and put up money and say, "I could challenge this in the court." At the end of the day, that they don't even know if they're gonna win anything there.
Mr. Chairman, you made an extremely valid and important point, and let me tell you why. It was only, 3 weeks ago, I was with a senior counsel in this country. And we were having a discussion first about an interview we were doing for a book. Then afterwards, I said to him, well, you know something? We don't really have justice in this country, nor in many parts of the world. I said, because justice was never intended to be for the few. Justice was never intended to be for the many. If it is not for all, then it's not justice. I said, we cannot have justice because when the political directorate offends the people, only those who have the capacity to go to the court will be able to get justice. So to me, when you find that a political directorate is offending the citizens, and the citizen has the capacity to get a lawyer to go to the court, you have to then try to organize citizens to participate without have to go to the court. You can participate and stop the government without going to court. You realize under the civil disobedience principles, you can withhold your taxes and you can go to the court, and the court will rule in your favor if the law says, the Constitution says that the national accounts must be audited by a certain time. That's the law. Now they are violating the law. But if the citizens were to say, listen, we're going to hold back with taxes, we put it in an escrow account. We are not going to pay it until when you do what the law is saying. They can take you to court. They can. But if they go to court, they will lose because they have been cases proven. The court will rule that you had a right to comply with the Constitution and the provisional laws, and you did not. The citizens have a right to withhold. That happened before in the history of Martin Luther King was very noted for someone. There was civil disobedience. Gandhi was the father of civil disobedience, which is quite within the democratic principles.
Careful, no, because there might be a law against inciting and kind of unrest there, don't you think? I mean,
no, it's not inciting. That's not inciting. That's educating and informing people how to exercise their democratic rights in what is supposed to be a democratic society. That's not inciting.
Well, good luck getting any number of people together with that. I mean, and that might be it. At the end of the day, we're probably just not interested enough, don't you think?
Well, a question was asked of me. Do you believe that we were ready for independence? Let me ask you that question. I was asked. Do you believe that we were ready for independence?
I would say yes. I mean, when are you ready for something like that? You should always be ready for that. Now, what happens after that, then it's up to us, no?
I believe that we were ready for independence, but it seems that we were not ready for after it. So, yes, Moses took us and he showed us the promised land, but we never had a justice to take us beyond. So when I look at our democracy, there's a price, Mr. Chairman, that people have to pay for their freedom. Freedom doesn't just come like that and roll from the mountaintop down to us like rain from the heavens. No. Democracy and people's human rights, we have to sacrifice for them. People have died for it. But
I want a tricky thing now, Joe, because I think the most important thing here is that we elect responsible people who can, not just somebody who we like, not just somebody give around $50 every time we push out the hand, and that's the problem that we are faced with now.
Yes.
Because they give you the money and then buy you off, and then what? You're quiet. You cannot say anything. Hi, Lisa. Good evening. Welcome to the show. Yeah, I'm not. You're either mute or I'm not hearing you. No, now you're mute. No, good. Put it back on. All right, try it. Are you hearing us, Joe?
I'm not hearing her, no.
Yeah, no, I see your lips moving, but I'm not hearing you. That mic might not be working. What's going on? No, not yet. You can hear me obviously, right? Yeah, no, I'm seeing your lips moving. I know you to say something, but I can't figure it out. Um,
Could I? Sorry.
no,
Could
no,
I,
no,
could I
I was
leave you with this one, Mr. Chairman, while the ladies getting together? There's a guy by the name of Edmund Gordon, distinguished African American, 100 years old. But he said something some years ago that I read about him, from something that he said. The same concerns that expressed in other parts of the world. In America, it was expressed there. Boy, it's difficult to get people to act. It's difficult to do this. It's difficult to do that. He said, but what about trying to get some example from the man from Galilee? He said he found 12 of them. He said, and one betrayed him, one doubted him, one denied him. He said, but in the end, he turned them into leaders. They were not just followers. They began as followers, and he turned them into leaders. He said, and they turned millions into followers of him. The point I'm trying to make is that if we are to defend our democracy and our way of life, our freedoms in that constitution, there's a price we have to pay for it. And the price begins in the cradle. Get the people to shape a mindset that is suitable for democracies in the true sense. It has to begin at the Head Start, what they call the same Bally Edwin Gordon started the Head Start schools. He was the inventor of Head Start schools, which should have been in Belize long ago. But anyhow, the point I will end up with this. We will keep preaching the counsel of despair, saying, boy, it's hard to do. The people are number one, but it's hard to get people. It is a fact that it is. That's a fact.
Let me keep you on this point then. You speak of the price that we have to pay and that it starts in the cradle. What is that price that you believe we have to pay?
I would say that firstly, we have to design, which was already somewhat in the genesis of the country in terms of its independence, that we today have failed to do what we said we were going to do in the 50s, 60s that we planned to do. What we had planned to do is that we were to begin with the family. We were to make sure that all children will be able to go to school. We were to make sure that all children will be able, all children, mothers, fathers would have access to health care. We were to ensure that when they left school, they have jobs. We were to ensure that in school they would teach some moral values. They were going to teach obedience to the law. They're going to teach respect for each other. We were to shape the minds of our young people so that they who will become the leaders tomorrow will continue to build on a virtuous cycle. And that is what we started. That was so. We started that in the 50s. This country, with less tertiary level graduates, was a country with a far more sense of values. Many of our people that were in that movement to independence, they served their God, they served their family, and they served their country. They are our heroes. No, somewhere along the line, we lost it. So what is happening today? The police keep trying to see how they can keep down murders. They keep trying to see how they can keep down crimes. You can never, ever depend on a police enforcement to do that. It has to begin with how you're going to create the mindset of a society. Marcus Aurelius in the Senate, a wise man, a philosopher, supported the bill, which was similar to the bill against public corruption. He said, I will support the bill. He said, but on one condition, let us all remember that as senators, we must be upright, not kept upright. As a society, Mr. Chairman, we have to try to shape the minds of our citizens that they must be upright and don't have to be kept upright. The ones they know that are not being, that needs to be kept upright, those are the ones that the law enforcement must deal with.
Yeah, the problem is that we're seeing a majority of those now, given that the families that we had back then, we don't have today. Right. Many of the families today are single parent homes. They're trying to jack on board for make ends meet. It's not easy, They have very little time to spend with the children to teach them. The education system itself seems to be falling down, because I'm speaking to children now coming out of high school, and I'm saying, but exactly what did you learn? And not much of anything.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I can guarantee you this, and I'm saying guarantee, and I'm hoping I'm not English because of something I'm a humorous person. The point is, I know for a fact, this country has the revenue base to make sure that we can remove poverty from this country. We say minimize. I will go further and say that we can almost remove it. Why? This country has the revenue base to make sure that every children can go to school. We have the revenue base to make sure through the tax system, if we had reformed the tax system, just like they did it in the UK and in the United States, where they call the earned income credit, where the lower income workers will be able to get a living wage. Through the same tax system, they will get back money. The money will come from those who are making it. The wealth of this country is being unfairly distributed. We have a growth of 3-4%, and we boast about our growth. But growth in itself doesn't bring development. For you to have development from growth, you have to have a more equitable distribution of the wealth. The wealth is not fairly distributed. Why should we be paying 19,000 people when most of them are supposed to be party hacks and party supporters and whatnot, and leave our children without education, without their families being able to earn a decent living? You know how a human being, by nature, a father wants to be a father and a mother wants to be a mother. That's an instinct in us. We carry the same instinct apart from our reasoning that animals have. But it's the basing of when you cannot get the opportunity to have a family, to earn, the mother and the father earn and look after their children. That's the greatest happiness a human being can have. But we deny them it, but we are prepared. To how many millions did not we give away since 2020 to people who we broke the break contracts with, to put in somebody else of our party, when in fact those same money, I am confident, could have every child in school at least for that year or two.
Let me see if I can hear Lisa now. Hi, Lisa. Lisa, your mic is not working there. It's not. Did you plug it in? Did you plug it? I don't see you on mute. I don't see why. Can you hear Lisa? I don't know. I don't know, Lisa. You're. I mean, I can see you, but I'm not hearing at all. And it's unfortunate because I know you're the one getting on the conversation. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to say for try. No. See, there you go. I wish I could read your lips, then I would know exactly what you're saying there.
Can you answer us if we ask you? Are you hearing us?
Yes, she is. She's hearing us well.
Let me give you an experience. What are you using? Your phone, or are you using a computer?
Laptop? All right.
Try your phone. Yeah, try the phone, see if it works.
Yeah. Joe, well, I'm looking at the political situation in Belize right now. I'm not seeing much in the opposition at all, which is sad, because I said earlier that to have a democracy that works, we need a thriving opposition, an opposition that's effective. What you see any hope anywhere in the near future that this group will get its act together?
I would say this: the human race eventually will not just disappear from the earth through its own failures, but humans will reach a point where they get what you call the shock treatment if they do not turn the curve before. So I would say for a fact, they will get their act together one day because they will hit rock bottom. Now, what to me I find very disconcerting today in our politics, and as speaking to you as a lifelong member of the People's United Party, that when you have a weakened opposition, you are like a weak government because the citizens already over the many years were not prepared to participate.
Um,
We were depending not on the opposition, the official opposition, to keep the government. Something is happening here.
something that happened. I said, Lisa, say something, Lisa.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, but you come on now has caused an echo. Yeah, no, that's causing an echo with I'm
What about
distorted.
now?
Joe, did you say something, Joe?
Yeah, you're getting an echo. I'm hearing myself. I'm hearing myself.
Is it still there?
Hello? Yeah. Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah, my echo and Joe echo is here. You're coming clear now. You have no echo. We hear you. We might have to let you go and take the show from here because we can hear you.
Are you on your phone? No.
I'm on the phone now.
That's see. There is something. I had the same.
Yeah, remember last week?
Right, he did.
And you were on the phone last week, Joe?
I was.
Yeah.
Okay, let me exit and come back in. I'm hoping that this doesn't, it's not a problem.
Curtis,
Oh yeah, the song.
Curtis suggests you close the computer.
I did.
All right. But that echo is there. My echo and Joe's echo.
Okay, let me exit and I'll come back in again.
Try it one more time. Yeah, please.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah,
You're
so-
saying that they're rock bottom and that well they're going towards rock bottom and you don't think they reach there yet. But once they get there, they will rebound. But
That's
you have to have something to start with to get there and rebound. So you have to rebound something.
what is most disconcerting to me is not the fact that they will rebound, because they will hit if they do not make an effort to change before. They will change when they hit the bottom, but that's not what I want to see. I want to see a strong opposition in this country, more so in the absence of a strong electorate. Traditionally, and I say traditionally, I don't mean for the whole 40 years, but most of it, we have been depending on the opposition to keep the government in check. But now today, where the opposition has so discredited itself for the 13 years while in government, which it did, that's why they removed them. And then, of course, you have a new government now going for the fourth, fifth year. And yes, there is some rising discontent over the management of resources, etc. But then you have an opposition which still seems not to have been able to create a credible alternative in the minds of people. Not saying that they will lose, I'm not suggesting that. But the point I'm making.
Well, you're not hoping for that.
No, I'm not hoping. You see, let's look at the parable or the analogy of the courtroom. The judge can give a best decision, a very competent judge, give the best decision when he have a strong prosecutor and a strong defense. When the country has a strong two-party system or three-party, whatever it is, the party in government can be kept in check because the people of Belize especially depend on the political party. So when the opposition is there, the people can then use the opposition to deal with the government, to keep the government in check. But if the opposition is weakened and become dysfunctional, and the people themselves don't want to lead in the participatory spheres of democracy, then the whole democracy is weakened because the government then will have a field day.
Yeah, Lisa, how are you?
Can you hear me, guys?
Oh yeah, that's it.
Right.
You're back on
Okay.
your computer. Good, you're in.
Okay.
Guys, you know what I have seen? A lot of negative campaigning, and I see this every election, as opposed to the party that wants to get in, come forward and say, listen, we want to be your government because we want to do this. We want to make this happen for you. We see, oh, then why not that what business? Then why not they do nothing? This one, and start pointing out things that the other candidate might have done, and I find it not constructive at all. What do you think? Can we do better?
Of course, I mean, I don't, I haven't lived in Belize since I was a kid. But I do follow not very closely neither political parties, but as an observer, I think there's a lot to be desired of their campaigning styles. The just the management of their campaigning, how they're going about, acquiring votes, and the marketing that they're using to do these things. I think that we need to change that idea of going out there and offering just the basic immediate. It's like putting a band-aid on a wound. I'll give you $5 today for a vote tomorrow. But how long does that $5 last? It only lasts as long as as long as there's 24 hours. And if it does last 24 hours, you want something that lasts longer than 24 hours. Especially when it comes to the marketing of, oh, I'll give you a bag of food, or I'll pay for your lunch, I'll get a bus for you to come out. All those marketing styles and campaigning styles for me are very distasteful. I mean, you got to talk to people, you got to start to talk to your villagers, your town people. Come out and talk to them in forums. This negative way of campaigning to me just seems very poor. It's a poor way of getting your point across. Today it's not only about $5. We got to be better at doing this. I mean, and then again, the people that take these offers, um are taking the offers as like we would say when we were kids, the brata. Everything the brata, it's free for the moment. You get one extra something, but the extra something has consequences, because when you're winning by one and two and three votes, those votes do count against how you live your life the next administration.
You know,
So what kind of brata that becomes?
what
You
I'd
have,
like
sorry, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, go ahead.
what I'd like to see is these politicians make speeches. They don't even make speeches
Right.
anymore. When's the last time you see a politician get up and give a speech to try to explain to the people why they're the better choice as far as the office is concerned?
The last time I saw that was in 1998. Anyhow, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask Lisa, you have identified the problems. Would you attempt to suggest solutions?
Yes, and one of those solutions is what our chairman has discussed. We need to have real talks, forums. I remember when I was a little kid, and not to bring this up, I mean, I don't know much of it, but I do remember when I was a little kid, I remember Mr. Hector Silva, Mr. Dan Silva, Mr. Salvador Fernandez. These were
Uh,
the men of my very young childhood, just before I left Belize in the early 90s. But
all
in the
UDPs, by the
80s,
way. All UDPs, by the way. You know that. That all
um,
by the way, I mentioned a UDP now, so we know which
No, not
meetings you
all of
were
them, not all of
attending.
them. No.
no,
Hector
no,
Yeah, Hector, I'm just messing.
and
Hector,
right.
Dan,
Um,
yeah.
Dan was UDP, then it changed to PUP. Dan Silva.
It did change, right? Yeah.
Well, Figueroa, they almost bought him away, never come over.
All right.
Go
well,
ahead.
I'm not, like I said, but these were the young generation, the young men of the 1980s when I was a little girl, and I remember that they didn't go only door to door. We met them at the fields,
They had
at
tongue meetings,
Galvez
right?
Stadium, at Town meetings, right?
Yeah.
Where are the men where are the young men today and the young women? And that's another issue. There's a lot of young women out there with powerful messages, and we're not allowing them to speak.
But you are not giving me
You
the
were gonna say
you are giving me
the
example.
salute, like I said,
You are giving
examples. But what I'm saying is the
example.
examples are we need to get people out there to talk, give the speeches, have
Yes.
forums that the media houses can actually interview these candidates. I believe there was a nice interview. There was a young lady with an interview this morning on Love FM, and she was stating her position as a candidate. I mean, those things need to continue. They need to have I mean, let's the marketing has to be different. The marketing to introduce point by point where what the administration or what that political party is seeking and what they want to do for each constituent. When that starts happening, I think people are going to have a better understanding of what the parliamentary government system is and and how it works.
But the party marketing itself, evidently, I have seen some very eloquent, some very articulate, some very highfalutin promises, which then depends on voters' decision whether they can really see through them as things that can really happen. But can I
Yeah,
give you an example of what I think we could do?
Sure.
Look at the marketing. When the manufacture its goods, and it goes to market it through the marketing agents, and they go and sell the goods. They marketed them. They tell the people how good this lawnmower is and whatnot. What the manufacturer does, he backs it up with a warranty. You say, I'm giving you a warranty for 1 year to show you that I am selling you a good product.
Mhm.
What happens in the democracy, in the political system? The same thing happens. But our manufacturers gave us the warranty through the Constitution and the provisional laws, but we don't want to cash in on the warranty. The warranty is you come and you make some promises. If you read right now, both parties, but now we need to address the government, the incumbent. Read their manifesto and go through it. Now they are in their third, fourth year, and ask yourself how much of it have they completed? Because they are competing for promises. They're not competing for the reality of these promises. And then the people are hoodwinked because they are not sophisticated enough. But if we exercise the manufacturer's warranty that they gave us, we can do the recalls. So if
Correct.
you take the promise and we find that it was just a promise, but you are not moving towards fulfilling the promise. If you tell me in your manifesto that you will bring back the permanent secretaries, that you will streamline the public sector, you will right size it, you will bring back the neutrality, you will bring back the meritocracy, you will bring back a very efficient, effective public sector, which is the instrument, the main instrument for effecting those government campaign promises. Now, if you tell me those things, and then we elect you, and then we begin to now go through the year they go, first year, second year, third, fourth, we got one more. And when you look at the promises, not even 60% were completed. But
Right.
you should have known before that we must exercise now the participatory part of our democracy, where the citizens comes in now and said, listen, we are not pleased with this particular candidate that we elected. So you go for the recall. We have a recall system, but we don't want to use it. The other day, I understand that Bruce Martinez came up, with some nice ghetto talk. He's very good in it, very eloquent in the ghetto language. And to me, he was making some good points, but will he follow up on it? Because he was going for a recall. But we don't want to exercise the recall. We don't want to participate in the democracy as we should. So we depend on the opposition to do it for us. Then when the two of them come with their lot of promises, they will go for the one they call for him promises song better. Or he could, as I said, dish out more projects. Then when we elect them, we don't hold them accountable. And that's
Mhm.
the question we
We
have
don't.
to. Yeah.
I found it funny though with Boots trying to recall Usher.
Yeah,
I mean, like, you know,
you make a
really,
very
you,
loud.
you made it there. I mean, for 13 years, and you know, there are a lot of things against him. So for him to be recalling somebody, I think he needs to bring more than what he come with. But that being what it is.
Why,
Uh,
Mr. Chairman, there's a saying that sometimes it takes Satan to take down Satan.
Yeah, boy, but then
Yeah,
you'd have hope that you'll get better than Satan, and that Satan to take down Satan, and that's still Satan to get. So
that's
just taking down isn't enough. You have
the
to
spring.
replace what you're taking down
That's
with
right.
something better. But
Right.
your point continues to be, and I accept that the people participation of the people, that is very important. How do we get that to happen though? First of all, we have to educate them. That we're really not an educated electorate. Don't you agree?
Well, I think we have a wonderful opportunity using the same forum. That is what I think we are doing, but maybe we need to do more. Maybe we need to.
Good point. Good point. Good point.
But
I
that's
was
what this show
thinking.
is. This
I
show
was,
is reaching out to more and more people.
yeah, yeah. I
I
was
would say
thinking
that.
about the media, right? And I was thinking about Trump when he first came in and labeling them fake media. Our media in Belize, I don't know how independent they are. I see them split along the same political lines, like the political parties are. So and they're the ones that we're depending on to inform us, and even like if you're gonna during the election period, they make a lot of money because the political parties run a lot of ads, and they charge money for that. But are they really doing enough to educate and enlighten the people? And maybe you're right. It will take shows like these to get it done.
There is something about media houses which we need to educate ourselves on. I was listening to, I forget the name of this famous journalist. They were on a show. They are elderly. They are not in these media houses again. But he was going back to his past when he started out. And he showed you the change that took place between what was the media house then in terms of its objective and what it is it now. He's showing you now that today the media is driven by profit.
Exactly.
It's driven by profit. Now, he's not saying that they must not make profit because they are not being financed by the state. Like C-SPAN, I think
And
C-SPAN can be what it is because I think much of its funding come from the state, not something like that. But these media houses, they earn their living from the profit that they make. So they will sell the product to suit you, the consumer. And if consumers are satisfied with their result, with gossip and this slandering, that's what they will sell because that's how they make their money. And that's the point he was making. They are not given to integrity and ethics, the ethics that was driving them to educate and inform. But it happens because the consumers change their appetite for the product. The consumers are prepared now. Today they have this guy Zucker, what's his name? The head of the Facebook, the billionaire.
Zuckerberg.
Mark Zuckerberg.
I was listening to him. He was before the Senate Investigation Committee, questioning him and actually they're chastising him for the many things that they allowed to go on Facebook, the slandering, the abuse of children. They were citing many cases. So now they are looking to come down hard on him and they are looking to make some laws now. But what happened in our case? Some of, well, I don't want to say how many of us, but too many of us seems to like the gossiping and a lot of slandering.
But you down a thin line
It is
right
thin,
there,
but it is.
because Facebook, I think, facey, pardon the pun, Facebook will put you in jail for no reason. So they're very they censor you a lot. And I don't know if that's what the court is saying, that they ought to censor even more. I think that there has to be an obligation, and here again on the part of the viewers, because Lisa was talking about the guy go out there and give you a dollar when it last long. But you taking that dollar has to share also the responsibility for what is happening there. We cannot just look on one side of it, the two side. So I think
Right.
with Facebook, I don't know that I would be in favor of the censorship. I would be in favor of people monitoring their own use and the kind of things that they see and watch. No, I
Yeah, I was only using that. I never really wanted to get into the Facebook issue. What I was coming to is that the media today has shifted to a more profit-driven type media because they want to suit the appetite of the consumers. So it changed with the consumer change.
yeah, and
I mean,
again, it's tricky there too because we don't want government supplementing them and financing them for sure. We'd
but
like for them to be independent.
there was a
Huh?
time they were getting a fixed amount
Right.
from the state monthly.
Which was what brought down, I think, the PUP in 2005 when they cut that subvention to all the media houses.
Well, they
Uh,
never bring down the PUP. It was the G7 that decided when we had to review the whole financing that then we found out that there was an amount given every month to certain media houses, most of them, and that was given for them to not to be opposing the government,
uh-huh.
and they took it. So where is their integrity?
Right.
So the issue is nothing is wrong in making profit, but when you are allowing to become obsessed with the profit, the money of profit, that's where the danger comes because then your integrity is at risk.
But Joe,
You have to surrender your code of ethics.
it's the capitalism way. I mean, that's the way we've chosen to go. We I mean, they're all about that.
I don't support that kind of. Well, I believe in the wealth of nations written by Adam Smith, and I believe in capital, but I do not believe that man should be subordinated to capital. I think capital should be subordinated to man. When you
I,
look at when you look at the factors of production, the land, the capital, the human resource, entrepreneurship. Of the four of them, the one that manipulates all of them is the human capital. So why should the capital itself be given such a high share? And that is to me the unbridled capitalism that I wouldn't support. But when you read The Wealth of Nations, what Adam Smith intended, as Elon Musk is now saying, because he liked the book Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith was right. Except that I would not have left the market to go so unregulated. But it is when people are giving incentives to invent, when they are driven by a market where they can innovate and they can invent, that's what brings progress. But at the same time, the progress must not come at the expense of abusing human beings, because capital
Right.
was made to serve man, not man to serve capital.
you spoke of, you mentioned Elon Musk. What do you think of Elon Musk?
Well, he came up with a breaking news a few days ago. You saw the chip that he invented, he promised he would do it, and he has now tested it and it worked. He's putting a chip in your head. Yes.
Yeah, I,
Where,
I,
where you have problem, let's say your hands are not able to work. You will use that chip and you can work the computer. You can work things.
would you let them put the chip in your head?
Well, if I don't have any hands and foot, I would take it.
I
What
see.
Elon Musk has been warning the world about, he's a somewhat arrogant guy. I'm not a personal person, I find it, but I like him because I read some of my books in what he advised to read. No? But what I would say about him, he warned the world about artificial intelligence. He said when we will
Mm-hmm.
allow the computational factors to outweigh man's intelligence, he said it's the end of us. So he's warning the world about artificial intelligence.
I see him now suggesting a colony in space that people can go and live.
That's right.
I think that's craziness. Um, that's stupidity.
Well, Mr.
I
Chairman,
that are too much money. That
let me,
I would too much money
let
to
me
fail.
say something in a discussion I had last night. This is with a cyber scientist. And we were talking about the thing that Elon Musk just come up with. You realize that many of the things that we are doing today, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago was science fiction.
But it had everything to do with Earth.
You remember when when Wells wrote First Man on the Moon? I was in school reading First Man on the Moon. But nobody believed that was possible. That was science fiction. That was a book written by his imagination. So the reality of the world is that to say that what Musk is seeing, he will not actualize it. I wouldn't do that because science fiction is becoming facts now. They have proven a lot of things. The world is moving,
In reality.
but it is moving with the risk. And that is what Elon Musk is warning the world about. I was at this guy house, the same cyber scientist, security. He's a visiting police, but he has a home there. When I look, I see a circular thing begin to run around. So I asked him, I said, what is that? Because he touched a button. He said, that's a robot.
mm.
No, I didn't know they have them. Maybe I should have to buy one.
Yeah,
I
but
said,
and they're not called looking like a human being, but they can
no,
do
no.
things.
It's like this.
They
You put on.
perform functions. Yeah,
Right. And he got in the housing when you touch and come out. And they
yeah.
run all over the floor. It's a sweeper. He cleaning.
And a toy.
No,
Um,
it's not a tie. It's the cleaning out.
I know, I'm messing with you.
And when it's
Uh,
done, he finish, he goes back into the garage or whatever.
uh,
And then he begin to dump the waste.
I see our guest has arrived. Now let's see if we could hear Crispin. Mr. Jeffries, good evening.
Good evening, Mike. Good evening. Thank
Wow,
you for having me.
you're good, man. That the work good. Yeah. Where they on the phone?
Yes, my phone.
You have to put that on a spot there where tired your hand, no?
All
Yeah.
right.
So Jeff, I want to thank you for coming on. We're tonight we have Mr. Joe Cowie and Miss Lisa Castanedos. Castanedos is correct. And we're normally joined by
Castañedes, that's correct.
Castanedos. I'm sorry. By Greg Morrison, but he's not on tonight. I think he must take on leave break. Jeff, we want to talk about a few things. In particular, like the policing, because first of all, let's introduce you properly. You're a former commissioner of police. You work your way up through the ranks. You where I believe you were officer in charge of Eastern Division, which was the toughest division in the country. You could say that. Um, and then you went on. You were a musician, so you led the police band for a long time. What am I missing?
Well, you've covered most of the things that I did in some areas. I started out, my first command was patrol branch, Belize,
Mm-hmm.
and then I spent a few years there. I worked under different commanders, Eastern Division, while still having responsibility for the police band. But after a period of time, I ended up as the officer commanding Eastern Division.
Mm-hmm.
So that was after I was sent to Belmopan to work for a period of time. And then during that time, I repeatedly attended training courses in Jamaica to improve my policing knowledge and skills. And then I
Well,
came back.
how do you compare policing in Jamaica to policing in Belize?
Um, Jamaica has a large police department. Actually, we are now moving to the in Belize to see the police department ending up in thousands. Back then, the police department in Jamaica had over 10,000 police officers.
Oh,
Uh, one of the things that the Jamaica Police Constabulary has is something called an auxiliary police, and the auxiliary is almost half the size of the regular force. So they have a very large police department in Jamaica. But Jamaica is divided, just like Belize, into parishes, and they have head stations and precincts, just like we have. So,
do
but
you?
the policing there is similar to that of Belize in that it is coming out of the colonial police structure. One of the things that I mentioned just now is that going to Jamaica to train was getting training along with police officers from most English-speaking Caribbean countries. We found ourselves in groups of police officers from Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, Cayman Island, Turks and Caicos. They came from all over because the training courses that were done there was developed as a from the the content of training courses that was given in England. So the overseas the police overseas training program was brought from England for Caribbean police officers, which facilitated more officers coming from the Caribbean to participate in Jamaica. So to a certain extent, it was localized to Jamaica, which was not necessarily good for the other territories, but it providing an advanced level of training for policemen of all.
Did you see any similarities in the types of crimes being committed there?
Well, Jamaica has, because of the size of the population, violent crimes and large police specialized units were always a problem. And Jamaica had, in those days, they had a number of the things that we are seeing in Belize now, where there were large home invasions, robberies, the murder rate was very high, and the crime was extremely violent. But they had drug crimes too, and they had the usual tinted police officers. So it is, to a certain extent, a lot of similar to what we are seeing now in Belize.
I have a lot of respect for your knowledge of policing, because you've done, I mean, forget the courses that you took. I know that you had stacks and stacks of books, and I used to go in your office and sit down and watch you to read there and go through there and sharing some things. Do you ever now that you've retired, about 10 years, no? How long you retired? Yeah. Do they call you back? Do they ever call you back and say, "Listen, Jeffries, you got all this experience. Can you come in and share some of this with some of the incoming police officers?" I mean,
that is not the culture of the Belize Police Department. The culture here is you are given a contract at the end of your term of office, and once you're let loose, that's it. So a number of police officers, retired police officers, are now beginning to feel where the police department discard them. So
even seem isolated, don't they, at times?
They seem discarded because they're not connected to anything within the department, and they're not communicated with. You hear people saying that the police department used me and let me go, and that's it. I think a number of people who have left at senior ranks find themselves in private sector, trying to survive, doing their own little businesses, but not necessarily connected to the police department and not necessarily connected to security. A few have found themselves employed with private companies that run security units, because some legislations was passed earlier on that made it possible that companies can create their own security units within the company, and senior police officers find themselves attached to these organizations, just like former military officers are often head of security system, security units within these companies. So, and that is a similarity to what happens in Jamaica.
Is there a culture within the police, you think? What's the percentage of bad police, you think, in our police department?
It all depends on what you mean, what you go, what you want to go by to say bad police officers. There are police officers who are extremely violent, if that is what you want to talk about as bad police. There are some that are dishonest, and some that conduct themselves as the everyday criminal in the street. And those percentages are very small, and from time to time they are caught and they are weeded out. But like everything else, you cut the grass and new grass grow.
So you're comforted in the thought that there are more good police than bad police. You said it. Yeah.
I would say that. but I would also venture to say that the level of training speaks to the quality of or the integrity of police officers are
Is it sufficient?
not sufficient, not
Yeah,
sufficient,
yeah.
sufficient. And we have lost, just like the Belizean community, the police department have lost a lot of some of those traditional things that enhances character and the character of honesty and kindness and intelligence and tactfulness are not necessarily some of the things that police officers apply today. They apply brute force and technology. One of my constant peeve is to look at how, on a day-to-day basis, the police has been adopting the use of technology, and because of the technology, they are doing a lot of blogging. But because of blogging, police officers spend more time even on duty, sorry, even on public areas, looking at their phone most of the time to find out what is the latest happening in the department and what is the latest information being shared, as opposed to being alert and attentive to what is happening in the streets in front of them. So that's an issue.
Which is certainly no easy job. They have to be alert all the time.
Well,
Um,
yeah, but you see, there was a time when there was no everyday use of cell phone by the police officer, and they were alert and they were informed.
uh,
There was there is the communication system where handheld radios and information can be shared with you. But today, police officers use the system in place to keep them informed to abuse. So today, most of them, when they are not looking at the blog, they are looking at Facebook and YouTube and other things other than paying attention to what um,
yeah.
incidents of crime and incidents of unlawful behavior is taking place in their very eyesight or in their very presence.
How many years did you spend in the department, Sir Jeffries?
Mike, I joined the police department in June of 1973.
Wow. Yeah.
1973, and I got out um, of the police department around 2011, and I moved on to the transport department for another 2 years. So I spent overall working for the government, I believe, some 42 years.
Did you enjoy that time? Did you?
I would do it tomorrow again.
Yeah. Did you? There was ever a time when you said, "By Jeffries, you must crazy. What you to do that? You know, you could go out there, you could do something else. Were you satisfied with your choice as a peace officer?"
I was satisfied with the work, disappointed with the support that the police department got as an essential service in the country, I believe.
Wonderful.
I serve under just about every Belizean who became commissioners of police. And we started out under Mr. Adolphus, Mr. Willoughby, and we saw effort being made to improve the department, modernize the department. I was there when most of the studies was done. Um, well before the Crooks report, there were two other studies that was done to how to improve the police department, but implementation was never done because the government of Belize has always limited its resource, its financial resource for policing law and order.
Tell us a little about the Crooks report, and has any of that been implemented, as far as you know?
Significant amount of the Crooks report has been implemented. People aren't seeing it, and there isn't much fanfare over it. But in recent time, and under the previous political administration as well as this political administration, both have been doing things to improve the police department, but both have failed in looking at a key area, and that is the infrastructure of the department. The police department has seen increase in numbers that will take it well over 3,500 by the middle of this year. But the Crooks report was making recommendations for those numbers, but it was also making recommendations for other resources, technology, is one of the things. Radio communication, transportation, those were issues that were in the Crooks report. Rank structure was in the report, but along with the rank structure came role and responsibilities, and some of those things are not necessarily being catered to. Enough money is not spent to develop middle and senior management sufficiently. There is a lot of courses that is being run in the department at all levels, but to what extent it is going out there. The police department changed the name of the police training school, the police National Police Training Academy, because of the level of qualification of people who enter it, as well as who operate the train, who administer the training courses. But the whole system of how it is set up is failing. Is failing because the structure the structure of the department is such that when you look at the value of the type training that is being given, it is just you're looking at the medical system. When we compare the system where you had a teachers training college, where teachers were trained to be teachers, go out and train and come back and do a lot of things. That is the absence of that, and the replacing it with academic qualification is is laudable, but it is not necessarily necessarily delivering the quality of teaching that is required. Similar to that in nursing, you look at the same field and you academically provided all sorts of level of courses at UB, and people do all the theoretical training at UB for nursing. But back when I knew the nurses training school, there was the theory, but there was also the
Practical
continuous,
stuff. No?
and that is how we have it today. You have a lot of in-service training officers and a lot of structures in place, but who is guarding the guard? Who is monitoring and evaluating, and who is assessing the people who are assessing the training in Belize? So sometimes you need to do some serious monitoring and evaluation of what is being done and who is doing what, to see if in fact they're competent and qualified to deliver that.
The police is run by what is it called? A police board of some sort of board, right?
No, the commissioner of police sits at the executive level, and the commissioner of police have desk officers that is responsible for specific areas, streamlined across the department. So there are operations, there are crimes, there's intelligence, there's prosecution, there's traffic, there's training, there's administration, there's community policing, and those people work as desk officers responsible for those specific areas. Now, an officer may fall in many of those areas, but is the manuals, is the systems in place to ensure that they know what to do and they're doing it, and it is what they're expected to do is at international or required regional standards, and to norms that are now the order of the day. Not necessarily so.
I see we have a number of attorneys now within the
Yes,
department.
yes. We're having the attorneys. How are we using those attorneys within the department? Are we using those attorneys to assist with prosecution? Are we using those attorneys to assist with the investigation? The average police officer, hear the word jurisprudence. The average police officer don't have a clue as to what are some of those principles. Police officers who are attorney get a lot of schooling in those areas, but do they impart that knowledge to police officers? No. Police officers need to first go to a courtroom, and then the magistrate, who is sufficiently schooled, takes the time out to introduce police officers to court procedures and jurisprudence and those things. But sometimes it is not necessarily fully taught across the board and implemented. I could recall the times when I sat in court and I listened to the famous Simeon Sampson, telling people about jurisprudence.
Hmm.
And he was not on the bench, but he sat on the bench for a period, and he was a trial lawyer who does a lot of criminal cases, a lot of civil matters. So he spent a lot of time, but he was extremely versed
What
in
what I
procedure.
what I was wanted to get at, because there was criticism one time that we were losing cases because the police officers were doing the persecution. I was wondering if maybe that the lawyers shouldn't be doing that now, since we have what, three or four.
Mike, Mike, I this is where I think that when you understand what you need to put in to make a cake, then you get a cake. But you know how Belize call it broco?
Hmm.
You don't get a cake if you're not putting the right thing, if you're not putting the right, not only what you put in there, but the how you put them together and what you do with each part while you're putting it together makes the better cake. So you can't just put in egg and butter and sugar and flour and think you are make cake. You have to know how to get the butter and the
But
sugar mixed together.
will it
So
make this cake? Will it make this cake long enough, Chris?
yes,
Will it make this long enough? Will it make this cake? We should know how to make the cake by now.
that is the problem. You see, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You have changed the name of the police training school simply because of academic qualification, but you are not necessarily training the people with some of the things that they need to know today. So if you want to have human rights respected, and you want to tell police officers a whole lot of things about the rights of the public, and you don't beat them and you don't do this, the thing is that you are not training officers sufficiently to understand how to go about interviewing people, interviewing techniques, how to scientific evidence, how to use forensic evidence, how to do things, do many things. I introduced you. You were around when I was there as commissioner, and I introduced something called points to prove. But the points to prove is not something that Crispin Jeffries developed. The points to prove is a booklet that came out of a visit that I had to England just before assuming office, and I went to the Crown Prosecution Service, and I saw something that they had there that says no witness, no justice. But if we understand the system of Belize, if you go to Barbados, there is something called indictment, and the average police officer in Belize today take for granted that he can swear to an information and complaint, get a warrant, and arrest and charge somebody by paper committal. But swearing to a warrant does not necessarily mean that that police officer has proven to a magistrate that he has the evidence to charge the charges. So when you ask the question about prosecuting just now and the role of the DPP and the role of the lawyer, that is something that I had some very controversial time with the DPP, because I was misunderstanding the police's role as the people who introduce an offender to the justice system, when in fact that was to be done in a different way, because we take it for granted that the way how it is being done is the right way. And I was asked that question way back. I was attending a training course in Barbados, and the instructor asked me the question, when was paper committal introduced by the Belize Police Department into their day-to-day procedure? And I had no clue then what he was talking about, because I grew up in the department taking for granted that that is the system how it should work. But if you see a police officer notebook in Barbados and you see the processes that they go through, you find that policing out there is different. And I was amazed that when a Belizean was sent on that training course, as a constable, when he came back, none of what he was taught was allowed to be applied because they're saying that is old time school, that is old school. But if you understand how people are introduced into the Supreme Court and how cases go into the Supreme Court, it is on indictment. So the whole issue has to be looked at and see how we are training police officers to understand. So come back to what I was saying. Having gone to the Crown Prosecution Service, I was asked, what is it that you see here that you would want to bring back to Belize? And I to take back to Belize, sorry. And I said, look, I'm looking at this simple manual that says points to prove, because the points to prove is about all the elements that needs to be proven to get a conviction. And the police officers, I took that manual and I gave it to the instructing staff, and we dissected. And after they dissected and we sat down time and time again and went over it, I produced a manual and a little booklet that we shared with a lot of police officers. And today, many police officers still look at me and say, Mr. Jeffries, I like that book that you introduced called Points to Prove. But that was not something made by me. That was something looked at, delved into, and introduced based on the structure of our legislations or our laws related to the various offenses that are prevalent. And you have something, any trained senior officer or trained police officer know that there are gateway crimes and there are prevalent crimes and there are certain crimes that are difficult to prove in court because of what is required by the person gathering the evidence to prove that point, or to prove the elements to prove the point, the charges in court. So
unfortunately the conviction rate is dismal. I mean, last I heard that sounded like what about 5%.
Well, the last time we were hearing it was 13, but it has gone down considerably. It has gone down considerably. But you see, Mike, when you talk about conviction rate, you need to look at conviction rate in terms of the volume and the nature of the crime. You have property crimes. You have crimes against the person. You have sexual crimes. You have violent crimes. What are the more prevalent crimes? Today, with the legislations passed for the legalization of certain quantities of cannabis, those are gateway crimes. But today, those are not a problem, and less people are being dealt with for those offenses in the system at this time.
How do you feel about that? The marijuana,
Mike,
the ease and
it has created a total new living environment for me, because today I now need to contend with what I grew up with as a police officer, and I now have to walk into neighborhood, and I now need to associate with young people who have a right by law
to crush their weed.
To crush their weed, and some of them want to crush it in the street because the law gives them permission to have a certain quantity on them in their yard, and they take it into the streets. But if law enforcement start to get after people to having it on their person in the street, some certain people will misunderstand what the legislation was intended to do. This legislation was intended to allow people to have a certain quantity at their home place of abode and enjoy it there and use it there. But that is not the mentality of the young people. Today, young persons would want to say that, listen, I can light up and smoke my weed and blow the smoke in the police face and it can't do me nothing. And that is not necessarily what that law was about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't got big problem with the easing of the restrictions, because I think we were packing up the
Yeah,
jails
exactly.
with a lot of
That,
young people. Uh,
that
uh,
is, you see, the side effect of the negative side effect of enforcement
yeah.
goes that way, but it goes both ways
Well, yeah,
because
but I haven't said that. Let me finish the thought, because I remember reading something in I believe the New York Post or one of those newspapers, where a lady wrote to the columnist, suggesting that we, I don't know why, because we don't really do I could function and whatnot, and the columnist said, you know what, that's all good and well, but for the most part, I think it makes dreamers of potential achievers. And I think when you look at marijuana,
you see how you like I like how you use the pretty journalistic terms because you did delve into the way how um pretty journalism write nice pieces, articles, but you see how you put it, dreamers make what how you say it just now.
turns makes dreamers of potential achievers.
Yeah,
Uh,
dreamers yes, because of their lack of commitment and
but once they
interest.
get high and just sit down wrong and dream all
Exactly,
day,
exactly,
uh,
exactly.
because most of the guys we have seen smoke all, particularly the ones that smoke all day,
Mhm.
just sit down wrong the smoke and the talk,
Yeah, yes,
and very little else is done, and then become
yes.
a burden on the whole system because they're not contributing.
I am I am hoping that whosoever out there is listening, take that little statement or that little sentence or that little paragraph out of what those persons said and repeat it because they might be saying that you're attacking them because you too may take a smoke from time to time. You they attack them because you want to behave like you, and that is not the reality. The thing is that that article is telling you exactly what is happening. Not because we legalize and liberalize this thing, it means that it become free for all to do foolishness. You know.
or constructive. Joe, you want to say something?
I will comment at this point to maybe speak on the marijuana issue, but I want to maybe go back to something that Mr. Jeffrey had said. Who has served some 40 years, 38 or whatever it is in the police? I had served 20 years, well, 40 total, but 20 in the public sector as a public officer. Up to the top I went. And the rest was in more in 10 years as a minister, 9 years as councillor. But anyway, the point I want to come back to the public sector. Okay, you made some very salient point. Well, let me say something on the issue of marijuana. I believe that marijuana should be decriminalized for the reason of human rights. I don't think that the state has a responsibility to legislate morality. The state is limited to ensure that each one of our rights are protected. And your rights ends where mine begin. What I put into my body, whether it's marijuana or whether it's cocaine, that's supposed to be my decision. One of the concerns that society has been showing, where they believe is making more sense, but again, I don't think that the jury is out on it yet. We believe that you can legislate that kind of morality to make marijuana, cocaine, and these things criminalized. Marcos earlier said, and I quote him in earlier, that as humans, we must be upright. We must not be kept upright. No, if too many members of our society will have to be kept upright, the police force will not be able to cope. So I think that coming back to the issue, marijuana in itself only trigger what I believe I have a different philosophy about how human beings must conduct themselves. So marijuana to me, I don't see anything so detrimental in the decriminalization. But it's our children need to be taught at the early age from the cradle as to what is right and what is wrong. and let them be responsible. And whatever the consequences are of violating their own rights, not others' rights. To the extent to me that marijuana will be used to violate another person's rights, to that extent, then that to me should be dealt with. But the choice the person makes. So I think that going right back from that same issue with marijuana, that debate should have gone on. I think that the minister approached it wrong, and I told him, the minister seems to be promoting the decriminalization and to have it be made into an industry. The motive for decriminalization should not be an industry, because what you are doing there is encouraging the use of it. The state should not go on to try to encourage the use of marijuana. You're going to decriminalize it on the grounds of human rights. But the minister, and I did caution him, I told him I would not promote it as an industry to show how we can make money from it. Now, you want to use alcohol, that was outlawed one time. And then they realized that, but wait, we are legalize it, we are decriminalize it, but we are regulate it. And I think marijuana, yes, should be regulated, the use of it.
You can't deny that that one industry, the potential is there to make some money out
Yeah,
of
but
it.
I'm saying the state, when you see a rationale for decriminalizing marijuana, must not be because you can make money. For that matter, you can then decriminalize criminals or crimes to make money. The objective is not to make money. The objective was to uphold human rights, that the individual has a right. The same thing with abortion. I believe too, that a woman should have the right to abortion, but not, of course, total inhibited rights. But Mr. Jeffries was making some very important points earlier on. The first one I want to note on, Mr. Jeffries, is that I think the governments, and I say government in a generic sense, I keep saying that. It's not about PUP or UDP I'm talking. We have gone too long in the waste of human capital. The most valuable resource a country can have is human capital. But when you're going to take men at the age of 50 and 55, and you move them out of the public sector, what they were doing, you are wasting human resource.
Put them out to pasture.
That is when there must be no needed. Then you can give them a point where you say, well, you can leave voluntarily if you so wish at 60. But when you are telling somebody, in the case of the police, I think they can go at 50 or something like that.
55.
All right, so you are 55 also like the rest. No, at 55, that is when you're at the peak.
Yeah.
Well, look at Mr. Jeffries right now. You got a lot he could still offer.
So that point, I agree with you. Secondly, Mr. Jeffries, I listened to you when you were talking about the strengthening of the police force and about the idea of techniques. And I get the feeling that you were saying that they were depending too much on academics rather than some other characteristics or other qualifications. What I sense in police now, and I know some of them before they went into the police, somehow to me, character seems to have been downgraded in entering the police force. So if you have the right size body, the right amount of muscle, and I don't know what else, but to me, I think
a letter from the minister.
And a letter from the minister. I would have thought that character would have been playing a very, very important role. Integrity, character, those things are very important. You know the saying, and I said the other day to my friend, the chairman, that I think it's a universal truism. If you take a bad man and you put him into a good system, it won't work. But you take a bad system and you put a good man into it, it will work. So I think that the public sector today is not limited to the police. I think the political directorate is making a waste of our resources, the most valuable resource of our human capital. And I was speaking a bit earlier, not just in the police force, the thousands and thousands of people who comes into the public sector through political patronage, who are getting paid for doing nothing. So you pay them from the public purse, then you got to pay them to do the job when you want something done. I'm citing those because what I see is happening, and I went right here, Mr. Jeffries. I must give you credit. I know, I remember you well. I thought that you were among one of those who I would consider to be the top police officers we had, commissioners. And I think that I had a talk with the no commissioner when he just came back from studies. I said, Commissioner, I will wish well for you all, but the state must play its role. If the state doesn't intervene in doing the right things from the cradle, the police will never be able to keep law and order because there are too many people in this society today that has lost their sense of values. And these people sometimes are not only in the gangs, no, they are in high places in the society. They are within the leadership, political, private sector leadership. They are maybe in the churches, in the trade unions.
Maybe the police.
Well, of course, we know that they are.
Yeah.
But it's not only in the police. We have gone to the point where we seem to have lost the division, the distinction between the profession and the professional. But our younger people today, they see law as something bad because some lawyers are bad. They see police enforcement, the police force as bad because some policemen are bad. We see some doctors, we see medicine as bad because some doctors are bad. The truth about it, the profession does not create you, the profession reveals you. So when you become a police officer and you're going up the ranks, even from the bottom up, that profession will not corrupt you. Police force doesn't corrupt anybody. What it does, it reveal who you are. That if you cannot take the temptation, then you will give in. Mr. Jeffries, I think you should go back. Mr. Chairman, I believe oh no, it's almost so. I think you should. You have a lot to offer in the police force, in the law enforcement. You are at the stage, and not only in the police force, Mr. Chairman, this must be happening right across. Too many of our good people have been allowed to retire without giving them the opportunity to continue and to pass on. But I finish it there.
Mr. Jeffries, do you guys, is there a farmer commissioners club as such? Because there are quite a number of farmer commissioners still alive, right? Do you,
Not so much right now, Mike. There is
yeah,
about eight persons still alive. You have Mr. Zuniga, Mr.
yeah.
Zetina. Those are two of the older ones. Mr.
Wiley,
Zuniga, Mr. Zuniga is the last out of that group that
yeah,
came out of the people who enlisted back in the 50s and 60s. The ones that enlisted in the 70s, um, we lost some. Sorry, in the 60s, we lost some of those. We lost Mr. Bevan, Mr. Haylock. Um,
Brooksy.
Other than that, Mr. Brooks. Mr. Brooks enlisted a little bit later. Mr. Brooks has gone. So we have and then you had prior to that, you had Mr. Adolphus died. Mr. Willoughby died recently in the United States. So there's not much of those people. One of the two people from the older group are Mr. Zuniga, Mr. Zetina, and then you have the group like myself, Mr. Westby, Mr. Hewington Williams died also. So there's not no there's a Belize has only seen about 16 to 17 different commissioners, and out of that I can account for at least 7 that have died. So there's only about 7 or 8 of us still alive as former commissioners. But Mike, I want to pick up on something that Mr. Cowie said, and I am new to the show, and I appreciate his compliment. But I think one of the things that I wanted to touch on when he was talking was to look at the fact that he covered this problem not only within the police department but the entire public service, the public sector. And one of the issues that is plaguing the police department, and I realized that the show may end in a few minutes, but I wanted to identify the fact that remuneration is one thing, but compensation and continuous recognition after aging is one of the problems. Mr. Cowie, the society treats the police officer just like the police department treat the police officer after they get to a certain age. Today, institutions are not regarding the senior people or senior citizens for their contribution or their integrity or their work.
Or tap into the
And
experience that they have had.
well, this is it. But no, I'm saying that, Mike, if you go, if you look at, I was told at DFC that there is in fact strong policies in place that people with certain age should not be considered, because, and this is the area Mr. Cowie has the expertise in terms of as an accountant. But the issue of elderly people losing their their credibility, their recognition, their status because of the fact of their age and not being given due consideration, the National Bank will turn you down if you're of a certain age for a loan. Any of the financial institution will turn you down, and they don't consider you. One of the
I have a
things that
question.
some people right now, ma'am, what some people tell you straight up, um, nobody consider your pension an income, so you can't get a loan based on that.
Dangerous.
So that's an issue. But
Yeah.
Mr.
Lisa?
Mr. Jeffries, thank you for joining us tonight. Um, and thank you for your service of 40 plus years serving the communities of Belize, first and foremost. I thank you for that. But one of the things that, as an observer, that I have noticed amongst the 55 plus community in Belize, I'm very disheartened at the fact that yes, at 55 you guys can bring an enormous amount of wisdom, especially from experience in working in the field and having hands-on experience working the field as professionals. But I'm really concerned. Has the department discussed on a in a board setting or as a whole to, or even as public officers in the government, has the group of, or has all the public officers come together and say to the government, listen, we need to extend retirement from 55 to maybe age 62 and allow you guys another, another 7 or 10 years of work, of establishing a work and continue to afford the younger generations the skill sets that you guys can you guys can offer. I think we need to, for some reason it seems like we need to extend that retirement age. That 55 seems to be it's the debilitating factor amongst a lot of the people that, I mean, our lifespan is extending now. We have better medicine today, so we're not, our life expectancy is not 55 anymore. 55 is a very young age to be retired. I mean, I mean, well, at least I live here in the United States. Being retired at 45 and 55 is considered early retirement, inclusively retiring at the age of 62, which you are eligible to do. So I'm thinking that being Belize as it is, would you guys or former commissioners and public officers, has that even been touched upon as extending your workforce age based on the experience and your intelligence that you guys and the wisdom that you guys could bring to the to the department?
You see, I think one of the issue here is that across the board they are now looking at early retirement age to extend it. But the average person, because of the condition of service and the hardship that they have experienced over the years, want to get out at 55 and would fight again getting out later. But that is because of the what you did to motivate and stimulate that person to want to continue to work. How did you allow that person to develop a character, a reputation, a level of performance that their services is continuously required. So
They,
when one of the things that occurred in earlier years, police officers had to um, go back and sign a contract. If I'm not mistaken, a part of the condition of service in Jamaica is that if your performance review does not qualify you to continue after 5 years, we see structures right now in the Belize Defense Force where they would want to extend the age of retirement, but at the same time, if you are not sufficiently performing and qualified to move on to the next rank, you are told that, listen, at this certain time you will have to retire. In other words, if you become a captain and you have not successfully completed certain courses to go on to the next rank of major, they will tell you you will have to retire. So some people can go on to 45, but others will have to go off at 42. Now 42 is very young, but military service is maybe only 22 years service. So
yeah.
whereas the police and the other thing can go on. So it is an issue. But these
Go
are
on.
these are areas that I'm certain that other shows we will come back at this and talk some more.
This will have to come back. 'Cause that's one very interesting one. I have to give that some little thought to, because
Mhm.
I'm thinking the retirement age and not so much the problem, the wasting of the experience that this person has gathered. They might come back and give service in another way, as opposed to the 8 to 5 and show up for work and whatnot. But you can
Mhm.
tap into their brains and
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, what we had proposed for the CARICOM countries, I sat on the committee for the region, no, for the public sector reform. And we were saying that 55 will be the age of where you can leave voluntarily.
right,
Then we can make you go up to 62, but you need to continue to qualify to move up.
right,
Then
right.
you must go at 62. That and you could raise it to depending on the. You see, you're tied to the lifespan of a country. The
Yes,
country lifespan 30 years ago must have been at 60 something or 60. So you only had 5 years to live after you retire. Today, the country's lifespan is
Right.
around, I think, 70 something.
yes.
75 is the new 55.
So therefore, what we are saying is that your most important resource, your human capital, which is the most valuable resource.
Well, Mike, Mr. Cowie, I want to put this in. I was privileged to participate in training courses in Barbados, and one of the things I found out there is that their retirement age way back then is 65.
Right? Way back.
I I went there in 1977 to train, and I have gone back there on several occasions in different ranks on different training courses, as well as commissioner of police. And their retirement age is 65. And
All
Interesting.
right.
I would
That's
in
true.
1977, I went there and I met a 62-year-old constable, and I went back a couple of years later and I met that constable just when he was being retired at 65.
That's still a constable.
Yeah.
Still a
You
constable.
see, what
You
what
never,
happened is that Barbados during the era was leading the CARICOM country in the Human Development Index. Barbados was
Exactly.
more advanced than Jamaica and them. It was more
Exactly.
enlightened in terms of modern thinking. And I will leave you with this one, Mr. Jeffries, because you made a very important point. And these are the views of great thinkers of the world. He said the nation state will not be measured by the men and the women he produce, but will be measured more by the men and the women he recognize and he honor and remember. And I think that's a very true statement. And you said it just now a while ago.
Thank you.
guys,
Thank
Mhm.
we're over time. We're over time. Mr. Jeffries, you have to come back. You have to come back, because
you. Mike,
I
Mike,
know you had some problems and whatnot. So, but
but that, yeah, well, I wanted to learn how to get consistent,
we
and
got it now.
and but I must say to the gathering that I like the lady's comment from abroad, Miss Castaneda. I like Mr. Cowie's comment, and I certainly want to come back to discuss policing matters because Mr. Cowie has spent time at different levels, particularly when he was serving as a minister and was on the CARICOM bodies, because CARICOM is looking at these things from a broader sense. But I too want to leave this as a condition to come back. I want to discuss why we are not, want to discuss what can be done to get the government to look at two specific areas. Why so much people from the public sector is complaining of not getting compensated in time after they retire. And the second one, why aren't we looking seriously at the infrastructure? We know that it has been a practice for government to continuous, and the previous administration did a lot of rental. This administration is up in arms because they want to put up new buildings and stop that rental business and change some of the cultural practices of the past. But we cannot do only that. When you look at what is the Stancrick police station, it has been like that for so many years. The Corozal police station, this Orange Walk police station, well, when are we going to see improvement on that? When are those infrastructures going to be replaced with new locations, spacious locations, competent people? Adequate facilities.
We got a lot to talk about. Mr. Jeffries, soon, please. Anytime you got the time, make we know. Make we do a full show then on the police matters and the concerns that you raise, no? Guys, Lisa, thank you for joining us this evening again. Mr. Kowe, as usual, an honor, sir. CY, are you there? Good night, people. Thanks for joining us. Next week, same time.
Good night, everyone.
Place.
Have a safe week.
Good night, all. Good night.
Come on.
Good night. Thank you, Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you, ma'am. You're welcome.
If I know CY, I left work because I'm gone for a little extra time, but we're gonna leave anyway. Jeff, thanks a lot, man. Respect every time.
Man.
Yes, sir.
Okay, man.
Yeah, man.
Uno no see nothing yet. Uno no hear nothing yet. Uno no know nothing yet. Uno better. No tell nothing yet. We want to know how somebody not dead yet. Eradicate all threats. Oh. Living in a Bobby wrong, and nothing nice. Life no have no value, but death's got a price. What's all 2 foot mice, because plantain no they eat like rice. Living in a Bobby wrong, and nothing nice. Life no have no value, but death's got a price. What's all 2 foot mice, plantain no they eat like rice. Surviving to me, it's my crowning achievement. Now my main objective is just to stay on the pavement. I see cats go from showy to obscurity. Self-inflicted mental enslavement. All I ever needed was just a little taste. No, I'm after the paper like Gregory at Chase. The in the city's trying to welcome me back like Mace. All bad boys, don't watch your face. I'm getting into cat's pockets before they go get in mine. I spit 82 bars before the replay could bust a rhyme. And the moms of shine is like a mom's of mine. Big ups to all my cats on the grind. Rapping ain't easy, but I've done put in my bread. It's like the devil's playground, you can't be scared or timid. One life I've got, many lives I'll give. Cold talk, you know, we keep it frigid. BX 168, Gerard. But I treat the Big Apple like yard. We could do this my way, we could do this hard. Back off slowly or start talking to God. If it ain't assets or plastics, you ain't got no money. If it ain't high grade, you not rolling the bunny. If it ain't middle, it ain't sweet like honey. All thanks to Jah, even my nights is sunny. You could have $1 in a dream, but you've got to be asleep. You could be the president, you just got to pick the right seat. You can't be friends with everyone you meet. Ain't nothing nice in the NYC street. But if the devil offered you water, would you die of thirst? If you've seen an old lady, would you snatch her purse? Would you mind being second if you couldn't be first? Would you mind clapping guns as I rate this verse? And I do what I do like I'm doing it for a feature. You be the creature, reverse your polarity, go against your nature. See how many of these niggas is really gon' hate you. Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know too nice. Life no have no value, but death's got a fight. What's all 2-foot mice because planting no they eat like rice. Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know too nice. Life no have no value, but death's got a fight. What's all 2-foot mice? Planting no they eat like rice. I'll make you black hotter than Belize and Tamale. You'll be assed out like Usay and Kusay. Who say at the end of this call you can't dangle? I'll stroll past your makeshift memorial and blow out your candle. Triple like Fandango. You'll turn a lot of shade of pale. I ain't afraid of no ghosts, another brag, another boast. East Coast, West Coast, anniversal. I'll leave you stuck at rehearsal. Reversal of fortune. Time to let the light shine like the Neptune. Then evap to the boondock. Still keep it in the car. Still be gritty. Still be nutty. The only reason to blow through the city is to scramble brain dead challenges. I'm bullets like Wall Street. Goshen or battlers like ballistic heat. I keep it constant, consistent, potent. It's with bad intent I spit. Us, let them know. Lots of goons moving it. If I can't dazzle him with brilliance, I'll have to baffle him with bullshit. I'm here setting trends, believe it. Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know too nice. Life no have no value, but death's got a fight. What's all 2-foot mice because planting no they eat like rice. Living in a Bobby wrong, I don't know too nice. Life no have no value, but death's got a fight. What's all 2-foot mice? Planting no they eat like rice. You no see nothing yet, you no hear nothing yet, you no know nothing yet. You better not. Disappear for a while, but now I am back again, introducing a new style, them call the Link Bang. I am a musical zen, violating the charts again.